will now allow users to register within the application, and this is pretty straightforward. There's not really too much to do here. Naturally, Laravel handles will allow validation via the request that we receive, so it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to start off by creating our controller. So over in app HTTP controllers, we're going to create a new controller in here, and this is going to be our auth controller. So we'll create this, and I'm going to go over to my home controller and just copy and paste this over just to save typing everything out again. We do need a couple more things in here, but we'll look at them just in a minute. So we're going to have one method here, which is going to be get sign up. This is going to be the get request to the page, which will just display our view. And then we're going to have post sign up, which will be posting the data through to this to actually sign the user up. In order to get all of our request data, we're actually going to use request like this. This will give us access to the post data, and it'll also allow us to just really easily quickly pass this through to validate as well. And to use this, we need to use illuminate HTTP request, otherwise this type hint here won't be found. So let's start out with our form, and we'll build this form up, and then once we've done that, we can go on to actually sign the user up. So I'm going to return here view auth.signup. All that means is that inside of resources, views, we can create a new folder called auth just to keep everything tidy. And we're going to have a new file in here, and we'll call that signup.blade.php. And let's just write sign up in there for now. So we don't actually have a route through to this get sign up method. So let's open our routes file, which remember is just within here, and we'll go and create a new route for this. So let's just comment these just so it's a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to say home. Here I'm going to say authentication, and we're ready to go. So we're going to say route get. And there are other ways of doing this, but I'm just going to be very explicit so it makes a lot of sense. So we're going to say get sign up. This is going to use our auth controller. Remember, it's under chatty HTTP controllers, and it's our auth controller now. And we're going over to the get sign up method, and we're going to call this auth.signup. We're using these as a kind of namespace so we know what we're doing. So we'll keep all of the auth under auth dot. And there we go, we're pretty much done. So we can go now and we can refresh on sign up. And I probably forgot to change the name of the auth controller. I did indeed, so let's obviously do that when we copy and paste things. And when we refresh, we see sign up. Perfect. So let's work on our sign up view. Remember, with our home template, we extended the default template. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste this just to save a little bit of time. So let's paste this in here. And instead of this content here, we need a form to sign the user up. So if you head over to the downloaded templates as part of this course, you'll find the markup for the form. Obviously, you can go ahead and look at this and see if it would be better off modified for you. But this is the general markup we're going to use. We're not going to type all of this out. And it looks very much like this. You've got your email address, choose a username, and choose a password. So before we get going on this form, and before we forget, we're just going to update our navigation. So when we click through on here, we don't go through to a hash, we actually go through to that route. So let's quickly update that now. So remember, under templates, partials, navigation, we have that sign up link just here. So in here, all we need to do is say route auth.signup. And then when we go over and refresh, say we're on the home page, we can just click sign up and we go through to this page. Perfect. So let's close off our navigator. Let's close off home because we don't need that. We'll keep routes open because we're going to be adding a new route in a moment. But let's focus on building up this form once we submit it. So remember, we're submitting through to post sign up. So let's just kill the page here and just say sign up, just so we know that we're being sent through to this properly. You could even do a die dump on request just to see what it's all about and see what we have in there. So we're going to create a new route here. This time though, it's going to be a post request to sign up, and we can get rid of the name, and instead of get sign up here, we have post sign up. So what we want to do then is under the sign up form, we want to modify the action. That's where the user is submitted through to. So we're going to say route auth.signup. The reason we don't need a new name for this is because it's under the same name, but we're sending it through as a post. This route here won't be picked up, but this one will. So we can share the name from them. Just makes things a little bit easier. So when I hit sign up now, we get a token mismatch exception, but we're going to handle that in just a moment. But at least we know it's being posted through. So the reason we get a token mismatch exception is because Laravel by default has middleware. If you come under HTTP middleware, you can see we've got verified cross-site request forgery token. And this extends the base verifier. So you can add exceptions here if you don't want anything to be cross-site request forgery protected. But we're going to do that for all routes, so we can leave that. So to actually remedy this, we need to include at the bottom of our form our token, which is generated with every request from Laravel. And I like to do this manually as well as all of the form as well. I know Laravel does have a form builder, but I like to keep the markup completely handcrafted just in case I need to be very specific with what I'm doing. So here I'm going to have an input type of hidden. The name of this is going to be underscore token, and we have a value here which is session token, like that. So what that's going to do is it's going to output that token onto the form. If we just inspect this form now, we can see that at the bottom we've got a value here which is the cross-site request forgery token. And that means that now when we go ahead and submit through, we see that die and dump sign up text that we output in our post route. Okay, cool. So we are good on the way to actually signing up, but obviously there's a little bit more we need to do here. The first thing we want to handle is validation, and then we want to add some things to our form to output to the user if anything's gone wrong along the way. So with Laravel 5 and 5.1, this is extremely easy. We don't need to create a new validator instance. All we need to do is say this validate. We pass in request, which contains all of our posted data. And then we have this array, which will contain our names of our fields and our rules. So you can obviously chop and change these. I might not include everything you may need or may want, but you can add to these. It's super simple too. So this email is going to be required. It's going to be a unique email on the users table. So this will do a lookup on the users table. We want it to be a valid email address. And we're going to say we want it to be maximum of 255. So you don't have to do that, but I always like to. So the next field we're validating is the username. So if we just use this as a reference, we've got email, username, and password. So the username, again, we want to be required. We want this also to be unique to users. So this will alert us if there is any username that already exists. We don't want to register users with multiple usernames. We want this to be alpha dash, and we're going to set this as max 20. So the next one then is, or the last one is the password, and this is going to be required, and it's just going to be a minimum of 6. You can obviously include more validation in there if you want. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm just going to kill the page and say all okay, just so we know that this validation has passed. What will happen is this will throw a new validation exception, and then it will redirect us back to this page, and it will give us them errors that we can just start using. So at the moment when I hit sign up, it looks like nothing's happened, but we actually now have the error data within this view, so we can output the errors in the form. So let's focus on outputting the errors just now. If we head over to the sign up page, we can start to add these conditions in. So what I'm going to do is for the email, you can see that this is separated by form group. And what we can actually do is on form group with Bootstrap, we can add a class called hasError. And you'll notice that that will turn everything red there, including the input. So what we want to do then is we want an if statement here to check if we have any errors for the email field. So we're going to say errors, which now exists within this view. Well, it always exists, but it has relevant data in now. So if errors has email, we want to output the text has error. Now notice I've not included a space here, but I have included a space here. That just means that we don't get an extra space always included within the in between the classes. And then otherwise, I want an empty string. So it's just a ternary operator really, being output as a string. It's pretty straightforward. So now, when I click sign up, we know that this has gone red because we haven't input anything and it's a required field. So I'm just going to quickly do that for all of the other fields. So after form group, we can paste this in. So it's errors has username. And then down here, errors has password. And of course you can include a password confirmation as well if you wanted to. So I'm going to hit sign up and we see all red, so we know that this is working. But where are our error messages? Well, we can do that underneath our input. So just underneath here, we can go ahead and say if, and we'll just end our if there to start with. I'm going to say if errors has email, so exactly the same as we did up here. Then what do we want to do? Well, Bootstrap has markup, which is a help block. So we have a span with a class of help block like that. So you can write this markup out. And then inside of that help block, we output our first error. So we say errors first email. Pretty straightforward. So now when I hit sign up, the email field is required. Perfect. And if there was anything wrong with that, so if it already existed or it was too long, then we would get the relevant message there. So you can play around with that yourself. So I'm going to copy this, paste it down here and change this to username and this to username. And we'll do the same for the password as well. So if errors has password, output the first password error. We refresh, hit sign up, and there we go. We've got all of our errors and it's showing us that there's an error too. So what happens if I enter some data in here? So that's not a valid email. I don't enter a username and I enter a password that's too short and I hit sign up. Now we've got the relevant error messages, but our data has disappeared. Now we want to keep the data for email and username. We want to persist these so a user can quickly correct them up and they'll be on their way to signing up. So what we want to do then for the email, for the input, which is the text, and that's the email, under this value attribute here, we want to output any old data that we get. So all we do is we say request old, then we specify the field name, which is email. And if that is the case, we want to output that. Otherwise, we want to output nothing. So all this is doing is it's like a short ternary operator. We're outputting the old email, otherwise an empty string. So when I refresh and I enter an invalid email and I hit sign up, that data now persists. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for the username. We're not going to do that for the password. We don't really want to output old passwords on the form. And we can just change this now to username. So let's say I sign up with my email address. I choose a username and I forget a password. We now have these two persisting and we can just correct this before going ahead and successfully signing up. We get that all okay string that we saw before. Perfect. So all that's left to do now is actually register the user and then go ahead and redirect back with a success message saying that we can go ahead and sign in. So to create a user, we need to use the user model. So if we head under the app directory just here, we're going to create a user model. You can see that one already exists here. It's got lots of data in here already. We've got our traits in here for authenticatable, and can reset password. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy all of this. I'm going to get rid of this here and delete it. And I'm going to put this inside of a folder in app just to keep things nice and tidy. And I'm just going to call this models. So this is a very light structure. You wouldn't want to necessarily have all of your models in one file. You might want to separate them by type. But I'll leave that up to you to do when your application grows a little bit larger. So I'm going to call this user.php and I'm going to paste that in there. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of can reset password, like that. And I'm going to get rid of the trait that's used just here, the contract that we implement here. So I'm just going to get rid of that up here as well. So we end up with the authenticatable trait here. We end up with our base model, which we're extending here. And we have our contract there that we implement on this user model. And we have the table that this is looking into. We've got the fillable fields, which we're going to modify in a moment. And then we have attributes that are excluded from the JSON output if we were to output this. So we can leave this in here, but we're not going to be doing that. So it doesn't really matter. It's not really relevant to this video. And I'm actually, just for the sake of clarity, going to get rid of these comments. I recommend you do have doc blocks on everything that you create within a model or a controller. But we're just going to leave them out for now just so it's easier to read the code. So I'm going to bring these down into a list just so they're a little bit easier to read. What fields do we want to be fillable? Well, if we look inside of our database, we've got email, username and password. You can see that they're both there. And, well, we have names. So we can change this to username. We also want first name, last name and location to be fillable. So let's just add these in now, even though we're not using them just yet. So first name, last name, and location. And I'm just going to pull these down as well. I just like to keep consistency. So I'm going to pull them down there like that. Perfect. So now what we can actually do is we can use this user model. It's namespaced under Chatty at the moment. And remember, we moved that to the models folder. So it's Chatty models now. So it's Chatty models user. So over on our auth controller, we need to use Chatty models user. And under here, I'm going to say user create. And then we can pass in all of the fields we need to create a account. So this takes an array, and there are many other ways we can create an account, but this is just, very straightforward and simple at the moment. So this is absolutely fine. So we're going to say email. Now, where do we get this data from? In previous versions of Laravel, you would have seen something like input, this input facade, but we can actually grab this from the request that's sent through. So we can say request input email. We can do the same for the username. And for the password, this is a little bit different. So for the password, we obviously want to hash this, and we can use the bcrypt helper. This is a helper function within Laravel to do this. So we can say request input password. There we go, done. So that will have created a user account, but we want to redirect the user back to the home page and then flash them a message. We've already looked at the alerts partial that we created earlier. So all we're going to do here is return a redirect. We're going to go to the root home, and we're going to say with info. We can also do with info like that. It's whatever you prefer. So I'm going to say with info. Your account has been created and you can now sign in. And I'm just going to pull these down onto new lines just so we don't go over too many columns. Okay, perfect. So we've validated. We've already looked at updating our form. Now we're creating the user and we're redirecting. So if everything's gone okay here, I'm just going to move this up to here like that, just to keep things nice and neat. And I'm going to attempt to register. So just to confirm, we have no accounts in our database table. Let's enter my email, choose a username, choose a password, hit sign up. That's redirected us back to the home page with your account has been created, and we can in fact see that that user has been created there. We've got the right email, username, the hashed password, these null values because we've not set them yet, and we have a created and updated date automatically set using Eloquent. So we've now registered a user. That's great, but we now need to sign in. So let's jump over to the next video and look at signing a user in.